Still work for February 23rd for 8th grade. So I'm going to post this in the evening or tomorrow. It's going to be for the students who either didn't get the live, didn't show up to the live, or didn't turn in the work. If you're in the live, you should be getting this. And I don't want to give it to students the day of um, because I want to see you try and work these problems out for yourself. So these are star level problems. If we're able to get these problems, we're going to be able to be successful. So I'm going to post this on the 24th. So for those who missed it, or you could check your work. So number one, triangle TUV is dilated. Which rule best represents the dilation? So the first thing that we need to remember, and always remember, is that when we are dealing with the word dilation, that is always going to mean multiplication. So the way we dilate stuff, if we multiply it, it's either going to make the shape bigger or smaller. And if we're making it bigger, we have to multiply by a number. Oops. Oh. All right, to make it bigger, we have to multiply by a number that is bigger than 1. To make it smaller, we have to multiply by a number smaller than 1. Alright, so if we know we're dilating, we know we're multiplying. So immediately, I should be able to cross off B and A, because those have to deal with adding and subtracting. A lot of students might think, okay, if we're starting at shape T and then make A into this one, it's getting smaller, and they might think, oh, maybe we're subtracting, because subtracting is getting smaller. But no, every time we see dilation, we know it's going to be multiplication. So the numbers and the letters should be squished together. All right, so we know that our original shape is the one that doesn't have the little notation marks. So this one on the outside is our original shape, and it's getting smaller. So if we're going to make it smaller, we have to multiply by a number smaller than 1. So we have to look at either C or D. Which one of these numbers is smaller than 1? 1/2 or 5/2? And 1/2 is smaller than 1, so that would make our shape smaller. If we multiplied by 5/2, that's more than 1, so it would make our shape bigger. Number 2, John ate 7 hot dogs in 5 minutes. Which graph has a slope that represents the average hot dogs per minute eaten? So hot dogs per minute. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our hot dogs on top of the minutes. So we're going to create proportionality. So we're going to create a rate, or we're going to find the slope. The way we do that, if something's proportional, the way we find a slope is really easy. Y over X. So if it's one of these problems and it asks you to find which one matches the slope, all we have to do is put the Y over X. So we know that time is always going to be the X value, and Y will be whatever else. So in this case, 5 is going to be our X because the time is minutes. So we would actually have 7 over 5. So our slope should be 7 over 5. And if we're going to simplify that, that's going to come out to 1.4. So we know our slope is 1.4. We need to find the one that matches, that has the same slope as 1.4. Now immediately I know that D is wrong because, remember, time should always be our X value. So minutes should be our X value. Minutes should be down here, so D is wrong. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this first point. We're going to put the y over the x. The y that it's at is 5, and the x is at 1. So 5 divided by 1 will give us a rate of 5. That rate does not match the rate in the problem. So we know that A is incorrect. All right, I'm going to go down to C. Now it has 1.5 for y and 1 for x. 1.5 divided by 1 will equal 1.5. So that doesn't match up because it's supposed to be 1.4, but I'm going to check this second one just to make sure I'm looking at it right and I didn't make a mistake. So the second point is at 2, and then y is at 2. So 2 over 2, and that's going to be 1. And that doesn't match. So I know definitely that C is going to be wrong. So I've crossed off 3 answers. Obviously I'm left with B, but I want to double check to see how it's going to work out. So I'm going to put my y value over my x value. 17.5 divided by 12.5. And when we divide that out, it's going to give us 1.4, which matches the rate in the problem. All right, and I'm also just going to go ahead and double check the second point too. So 38.5 over 27.5. And that also will equal 1.4. So that also matches the rate. So if it's asking you to find the slope of a proportional relationship, all you need to do is y over x. We're going to go on to number 3. Which statement is true about the information provided? So I'm just browsing over this. I'm looking at the answer choices. Clearly, it wants me to find the slope and the y-intercept of these equations. So I know that first I'm going to try and find slope. So I know the form needs to be y equals mx plus b, with m standing for the slope, b standing for the y-intercept. So the first way I'm going to find slope is by doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And if we forget that, it's going to be in our reference sheet. So I'm going to go to the y's. I'm going to look at the second y, which is 67, minus y1, which is 72, over x2, which is 2, minus x1. So 67 minus 72 is going to give us negative 5. And 2 minus 1 is going to give us 1. If we simplify that, we're going to get a slope of negative 5. So automatically I can tell that this is probably going to be the only right answer, but I want to double check to see that I got the slope right too, or the y-intercept right too. So I know the form is going to be y equals mx plus b. So I know y equals, I just found out m is negative 5 x plus b. Okay, and now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I need to replace y and x. So I'm just going to take any one of these pairs. So the first y is 72. And if I use that first y, I need to use the first x. Minus 5. And the first x is 1. plus b, comma b. And when I do that, it's actually going to give me 77. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and fix this. That's a mistake on here. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and go down to number 4. So right after we make this correction, all right, we're going to go down to number 4. Which representation shows y as a function of x? Or in other words, which one of these is a function? So in order to find out a function, we have to know what a function is. Okay, we should have this memorized. A function cannot have the same x value more than once. So we're not even worried about the y value at all. We're just worried about the x. So I'm going to start here and look at C. On answer choice C, I could clearly say, or clearly see, that I'm using x, I'm using -1, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So that is incorrect, because I can't use x value more than once. All right. If I look at B, I have 0 and 1, but these lines are telling me how many times I'm using each of these. So I'm using 0 one time, 2 times. I'm using 1 one time, 2 times. So since I'm using both of these x's 2 times, that is not a function. All right, and we are going to make one adjustment to this one as well as we go through it. And turn that into a negative. So when we look at A, we're going to see that this x value has one line coming off of it. It's being used once. This x value has one line coming off of it. It's being used once. This x value has one line coming off of it. It's being used once. And lastly, so does this x value. It's being used once. It doesn't matter that 2 of them go to this y, because we're not worried about the y. All we're worried about is that each x value is used one time. So this one would be a function. On the other hand, we see that D is wrong because we are using -4 twice. So our correct answer would be A. And we're going to go down to number 5. James walks from his house to the school and then from his school to the park. After he walks from the park, he goes back home. So how far is it from the school to the park? So first, he starts at the house and he goes to the school. Then he goes from the school to the park, which is what we don't know. And then he goes from the park back to the house. So essentially what it's wanting us to do is find the missing side of this triangle. And we know if we're having to find the missing side of a triangle, we have to use Pythagorean theorem. And what that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right. So A and B are going to be the legs of the triangle. And the way we can find the legs is by drawing the right angle. And so we know that these legs are going to be A and B. And then the hypotenuse, the long side, is going to be C. So right now we have to ask ourselves, what do we know? Do we know A and B, or do we know A and C? And I know A is 9, I don't know B, and I know C is 17.6. So I know A and C. So for A squared, I'm going to put 9 squared. I still don't know b, so I'm going to put plus b squared equals c squared, which is 17.6 squared. And to let the calculator know that I'm solving for b, I need to make sure that I'm putting comma b at the end. And when I enter this into my calculator, it'll give me how long the missing side is. All right, so after this, students should be completing 8th grade, 5th, 6 weeks, number 1 on Imagine Math.